The long-awaited trade from the Montreal Canadiens has finally happened. Jeff Petry is now a Pittsburgh Penguin. Guys, the deal was kind of written in the stars if you think about it. The Pittsburgh Penguins acquired John. They traded away John Marino to acquire Ty Smith and make cap space, but then we're like, okay, wait, maybe there's something going on. And apparently there was rumors that Montreal Canadiens general manager Kent Hughes was talking to Pittsburgh Penguins general manager Ron Hextall about a potential Petry deal. And guess what happens? Petry heads to the Pittsburgh Penguins, and the deal is quite shocking. And it seems like an absolute fleece on the side of the Pittsburgh Penguins,
I
which other
disagree.
people may not think that it's a fleece. But we're going to be
It's like,
breaking down this
yeah,
deal, which is Jeff Petry and Ryan Poehling to the Pittsburgh Penguins in return for Michael Matheson, the piece that everyone's freaking out about, and a fourth round pick in 2023. So, Luca, let's do a breakdown.
okay, well, first things first, I want people to understand something, okay? If you pay attention to a lot of the deals that happened, Ryan McDonough, Brent Burns, there was a pattern there, right? Of older defensemen who have a big contract getting moved for not so much. And I know that at the time, and you look at Jeff Petrie and you say, okay, well, he's 34, he's still got time to he's not necessarily at the downgrade of his career. But one thing I gotta say is Montreal didn't get fleeced in this deal. And I think people need to understand that it's not as bad as you may have expected. And I think the reason why is because a lot of people put this perception on Petrie's value, right? But you have to understand something. We were like, oh, we want a first and a prospect. It's a little bit more complicated than that because the thing is that yes, Petrie didn't have a good year, but he's also 34 and he still makes 6.25 million for the next 3 years after this one, right? Or the next 2 years after this one. So there's a lot of risk still involved in that deal, and if he goes on a downgrade, then you lose a lot of assets. Teams don't want to do that. Montreal, what they did essentially here is they traded away a 34-year-old Jeff Petrie who had a bad year for a 28-year-old Mike Matheson. Now, I know some people may look around and say, "Oh, Mike Matheson isn't the greatest." Listen, he's 28 years old. He's from Montreal. Kent Hughes knows him because he was a client of his at Cortex when he was an agent. I I don't think it's that bad. Do I think Montreal loses this trade? Yes, I do, because I think Petrie's a better player, and I think Ryan Poehling still has the potential to turn into something in the NHL. But I don't think it's
A
that
good
bad
third
to
line
the point
center, in
where
my
we're like,
opinion.
oh, we have to fleece it. Like it's a fleece. I think Pittsburgh wins, and I think they've done a really good job today in terms of with the acquisition of Ty Smith as well. I think they've done a really, really good job.
To stay
But there's a risk
competitive,
involved here.
essentially.
Because Jeff Petrie's 34. Letang is like 36, right? And yes, they had good years, but Pittsburgh's an older team now, right? There's no guarantee this team could turn around and be like, oh well, we've got all these players and all these old guys. Let's go out and go for another cup run. And I think they will likely do that. That's the message that I think they're sending the league. But it's a risk because if these guys end up downgrading, well, then Pittsburgh's just going to be in the shithole anyway. So for the Canadians, yes, they take on a guy with term, 4.875 million for the next 4 years. But he's a Montrealer. He's from here, and he's 28 years old. So it's 6 years younger than Jeff Petrie, which means Mike Matheson still has time. That by the time his contract expires at 32 years old, right, he'll still be in his prime, technically. And he's turning in his prime now, and last year had a career year. And I think if Matheson can turn that around a little bit, that can help the Canadians. So it's not as bad as some people might think it is. So I'm not going to turn around and say the Canadiens won this deal. I think a lot of people expected better, and I know a lot of Habs fans are disappointed
You
about
know,
it. But I will say that it's a decent deal under the circumstances, is what I'm going to say.
look, I'm gonna get right into it. To be this patient, not wanting to retain any salary, and this is the deal you end up with. Yikes. That's all I have to say about that. Look, Mike Matheson did
Disagree.
have his best season last year, 11 goals, 20 assists, plus 12, 6 points in 7 games during the playoffs. But I don't know. Like, I just don't know. Like even at the
What
time when Michael Matheson got traded to Pittsburgh, the Penguin fans are like, "Holy crap! Why? No, not Michael Matheson." And they were able to transition his game into becoming a solid defenseman. The thing is that he's not the same level as Jeff Petry. Jeff Petry is a top four defenseman. We do know that Jeff Petry has wanted to be traded from the Montreal Canadiens for a while now.
And
We know that
that's also the
it
reason the
was
value
more
went down.
concerning family reasons where his wife wanted him to come back to the States because they were not living in Montreal, they were living in the States, if I'm mistaken, Detroit. So they head to Pennsylvania now. He's still under contract. The thing is that Ryan Poehling is the problem for me. I understand you have a lot of center depth now in the organization with so many prospects, and you look at the center depth right now that the Canadiens have. You have Evans, Kirby Doc, Ryan Suzuki, a potential Dubois if they get that deal done. Um, so I'm just saying to myself, like, look, it's been a while now that Poehling has been trending downwards in Montreal, hasn't been really fitting in. But I wanted to see a full season of Poehling under St. Louis, and now we're not gonna get to see that.
Well,
So essentially, if you think about it, it's bad contract for bad contract. So Petrie for Matheson and Poehling for a fourth round pick. You already know how prospects do in Pittsburgh. They flourish. Sometimes guys that are like nobodies, that are like C level, B level prospects, they flourish in Pittsburgh
but
because they have a good system in place. They have a good coach in Mike Sullivan, and obviously being paired up with Sidney Crosby, and Crosby being a centerman. Paling can learn a thing or two under Crosby. So for me, it's as clear as day. The Pittsburgh Penguins win this deal, and they've been very active in the market today.
okay, well, one thing I want to say, first of all, I know you really don't like this deal, and that's completely fine. But one thing I gotta say is, and I know that people can turn around and say, oh, they only gained $2 million in cap space. Yes, but I don't think that this is the only move that's happening. And I'm gonna tell you why. And I mentioned this a little bit earlier when I was talking to my brother and stuff like that, just about hockey in general. The Canadians have too many forwards, right? They have right now currently under contract. They have 14 forwards, and they have a lot of guys in Laval that could potentially make the jump, and that's also including Messar and Slavkovsky likely going on. And I think with the Canadians, we're looking at this move going, okay, yes, we lose Ryan Poehling as well. Ryan Poehling, like you mentioned before, was trending down in Montreal for a long time. And I think he didn't fit the system. He didn't fit what the Canadiens were trying to do. And I know that under St. Louis last year, he had a little bit of a resurgence, and maybe it would have been nice to see him under a full season. But there's just no room for him there. And I think that allowing him to go to Pittsburgh and flourish, yes, he's 23, he's still young, he still has time to develop. But I don't think Ryan Poehling is ever going to be a top six forward in the NHL.
He's going to
And
be
I
a
think
third line center at
that's
best.
it. That's it. So I think in Pittsburgh, he's given that opportunity. But I think we need to relax on Matheson a little bit. I'm going to tell you why. Jay Fresh Hockey, who does a lot of analytics on Twitter, he tweeted something out saying Mike Matheson traded to Montreal, really put it together for the Pens last season in a second pairing role. Uses his speed to carry the puck in transition and creates rush opportunities, but decent enough defensively to cover things when things go south. I don't think that Mike Matheson is that bad of a defenseman, and I think that that's what people need to realize. Is he worth Jeff Petry? Probably not. But in terms of where the Canadians are at, they're getting a guy who's younger, and they've talked about them wanting to get younger as well. Well, they get a guy who's younger. They get an NHL experienced defenseman, so the hole that Jeff Petry is leaving is not that big of a hole. He's also huge. I think Mike Matheson's like what, six? He's six. I think he's 6 foot. Well, he's 6 foot, right? 6'2". So he's a big defenseman. So I don't think that it's that bad. The Ryan Poehling thing, listen, in my opinion, you look at his value right now, he's worth a fourth round pick. So the Canadians got what Ryan Poehling's value is, and that's a fourth round pick. So in terms of that, I think the Canadians are very, very. I don't think it's that bad. Do I think that there's more to come for the Canadians? Yes, because they need to create a
100%.
little
And
bit
I
more
would
cap
like to
space.
pull up a comment right here by Russ Travel saying, yes, but this opens the door to a potential Dubois trade. And in terms of that,
You have to sign Doc
um,
too, but yes.
yeah, I'm gonna pull up an interesting stat. Okay, so far during this offseason under Kent Hughes, you have Dandanov, Doc, Matheson out, Weber, Romanov, Petrie, and Poehling. So the result is an increase of $4,982 million created in cap space.
Yep.
So obviously they're trying to shed, and as a rebuilding team, it makes sense to shed money. The thing is that they don't only want to shed players to create cap space to, build for a long-term plan so they could have, guys like Cole Caulfield signing long-term and so on, but also to add, impactful youthful pieces. And, like you were saying, Dubois could be one of those pieces that they could add. And obviously it's going to cost you, but in the NHL, if you want quality young players with an impact, you're going to have to pay the price.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is too, right? Montreal, basically, if you look at their decor right now, they're investing $14 million on their decor. Their highest paid defenseman is Mike Matheson at the moment. But if you look at their decor, and I'm gonna just name out the ages, okay? 28, 29, 31, 20, 22, 32. That's based on cap friendly, which means their oldest defenseman is 32 years old, and that's Chris Weidman. So Montreal is doing something here. This is not a question. And look, we're talking about a team that's rebuilding. It's part of the rebuild, right? You traded away Jeff Petry. You got a guy that was in his prime. You got a guy who had a cheaper contract, and you have a guy who's still 6 years off of Jeff Petry. So I don't see the biggest issue of this deal. Do I think the Canadiens, like, I understand where the frustration is. I do, but I think we need to calm it down a little bit. And kind of like I want to address Chris Perkins' comment here. He says Matheson will create offense for you guys, which I assume you need. Coming from a Pittsburgh fan, he can lead the rush. And people calling Matheson garbage don't know. And then he's like, what is Ryan Poehling's ceiling? In my opinion, Ryan Peohling's ceiling is a top 9 forward. He's a guy that I think could play on your third line, maybe play on your penalty kill a little bit. You could throw him on the power play here and there. But kind of like what Chris mentioned before, Pittsburgh turns, and Joey mentioned it as well. Joey Volpe said, have you met the Pens? They made Evan Rodriguez look like a franchise first-line center. Pittsburgh has a tendency of making players look good. And I think that that's a positive sign if you're Ryan Poehling. You get an opportunity to learn under a coach like Mike Sullivan to potentially become better and become a better player and reach his ceiling. But it's not the biggest deal in the world because, like I said, if Pittsburgh they're taking on Petry, they have Letang that they signed, they had Malkin, Crosby. These guys are all getting old. So Pittsburgh's opportunity to win is right now. And if they can't win a cup in the next, 3-4 years, then they're going to be investing in all these guys for nothing because Pittsburgh should be in a position where they're rebuilding and they're not. So there's wins and losses to, I think, both this deal. But I think if we had to go based on winners and we're going to talk about who won the trade, I think Pittsburgh wins the trade simply for the fact that they get the better players or player, but Poehling includes that. So I think Pittsburgh wins in that sense. But I don't think Montreal did as bad as people think. And that's just me personally.
Look, it's all about saving as much money as possible, right? And that was Ken Hughes' plan. And let's be honest here, the Canes are not going to be competitive for at least another 2 to 3 years, right? So, trading
Petry. Oh, and they just signed, and the Canadiens just signed Rem Pitlick. So,
well, there you go. And that was a guy that people were freaking out about, saying, how the hell did the Canadiens not give a qualifying offer to restricted free agent Rem Pitlick when he had such a good season? Well, guess what, guys? Rem Pitlick signs an extension. That was a guy that was an RFA that became a UFA, and I knew it. I knew it like deep down in my heart that they were not going to let this guy go because a lot of people were freaking out.
So there you go. There's
for how much?
They didn't. The terms haven't been announced yet. But you want to talk about Ryan Poehling getting traded? You just replaced him with Rem Pitlick. So there you go.
And let's be honest here, Rem Pitlick was a very, very good fit once, being picked up off waivers from Minnesota. So
I would say that's all I really have to say about the trade, to be honest. I don't think
technically, if you think about it, the Canadiens trade Petry and Poehling for a fourth round pick, Rem Pitlick, and Mike Matheson, if you really think about it.
Pitlick was already on the team, but yes.
Yeah, let's answer some questions, Luca. I'll make you do the honors.
Okay, well, hold on. Sorry, I'm just... Okay, well, Zook, what are you doing? Says trade for JT Miller already. We don't need Petry. Gotta take that up with Brian Burke. And then he goes, Charlottetown Spud says, say what you want, but Montreal was not going to get a boatload for him. So to get younger, quality guy, and cheaper, mission accomplished. And that's exactly what I'm saying. Okay? Jeff Petry, when he asked for a trade, the value was already going down anyways because he had asked for a trade. So at that point, because the guy wants to leave, his value, whether he's expected to be getting a first-round pick or not, because he wants out, Montreal doesn't have leverage anymore because teams like he doesn't even want to play for you. So that lowers his value, right? And on top of that, Kent Hughes didn't retain any salary. So Montreal still saves $2 million in cap space, which I'm assuming they gave to Rem Pitlick. I'm waiting the details on that. But there's another move coming. They have to 1.1 million AAV for Rem Pitlick. So you see, they signed Rem Pitlick at 1.1 million for the next 2 years, and they're in rebuild mode as well. So Montreal absolutely does a fantastic job here in terms of being able to use their money wisely. But again, like I said, in terms of trade, I think Pittsburgh wins it. But that's just
And
how I see it.
like we have to understand, the personal
Oh, man,
perspective, which is
1.1
the
million.
family issue, and him requesting a trade. We all knew that Jeff Petry's value was not that high after the season. He had a very bad season, probably his worst season in his career to date. And we know that Montreal's trending downwards because they're rebuilding and they failed to make the playoffs. And he's up there in age, and that contract of over $6 million doesn't sit well on many teams that are lacking cap space. So obviously, a team like Pittsburgh, wanting to make this move, they're in it for the short term, right? That's why they made this deal. That's why they re-signed Malkin. That's why they re-signed Letang, because their window is smaller. Whereas for the Canadians, they get a younger player. Yes, it's a big cap hit from Mike Matheson's contract. But at the end of the day, they shed money and they get younger in age. And that's the whole point of a rebuild, is getting younger. So short term, Pittsburgh wins. Long term, Montreal, but it's still a bad deal for Montreal regardless. I think in any scenario in terms of the Montreal Canadiens, there was no winning. I don't see
And
them winning in trading Jeff Petry. And a lot of people are saying, why didn't the Canadiens do anything? Why haven't they signed anybody? Why haven't they traded anybody? Well, they were patient. And this is the deal that the Montreal Canadian fans got. They were hoping for a Petry trade. They got
and
a
one
Petry trade.
one thing I gotta say too, a lot of Pittsburgh media and even Pittsburgh management too, which I'm reading right now, they're not very happy that Mike Matheson got traded because they were very upset with the fact that he's been really good for Pittsburgh since being there, and I think a lot of Penguins fans are not as happy as people might think they are. And I think, like Marco D'Amico had said, who's a Canadiens beat reporter, he said, I don't think people have watched Pittsburgh last year because Matheson was actually really good. So I think we need to be a little bit more optimistic in terms of that. But going back to the comments that we want to talk about, Chris Perkins asked, what are the expectations for Montreal the next 3 years? And is Montreal in a rebuild mode? I honestly don't know. They go to the Cup Finals, then have a stinker of a season. They are in rebuild mode.
Yeah,
Kent Hughes made that pretty
100%.
clear, that they were trying to get younger and that they were trying to win on a consistent basis. And I think proving the fact that they finished last and basically went for the first overall pick last year, and I think they're going to probably do that again this year, I think shows that. Charlottetown Spud says, I thought someone would have gotten to Pitlick before we clear Casper. Great move to lock him up. Yeah, 2-year deal, $1.1 million.
I'll be honest with you guys. I think a verbal agreement was made with Rem Pitlick, and that's why he
Probably.
didn't sign with anybody else.
Probably. And again, just to address Data's comment, not a bad trade for Montreal. Lateral move short term, winning move long term. And Matheson's analytics are wonderful. And I agree. I think we're being way too pessimistic about this deal. And look, I think it's just Montreal fans being upset that they didn't get the value that they thought they were going to get. But
They were probably expecting a first-round pick, second-round pick.
But
Like
it's
that was
not
not going to
that bad.
happen.
Like we need to be more.
We
I think we
knew
need to be
that.
more
We knew.
optimistic, and that's just the truth.
But the
But you
biggest
know what?
losers are the Dallas Stars because they didn't get Brent Burns or Jeff Petry, and they have yet to sign Klingberg. So
That's
maybe
it.
they do resign Klingberg at this point because they're stuck. They lost Brent Burns, they lost Jeff Petry, and Klingberg is still available. So we have yet to see what's going to go on in terms of that dossier. Let's read one more comment here. As Pens fan, I think Matheson is a better player, to be honest. Look, see, a lot of people are stating this in the comments, from especially Pittsburgh fans, that they won the deal. Data says that Klingberg said he's not going back. Yeah, I mean, I also heard about that too, but you know how players are.
Well, I
Sometimes
mean, I think Klingberg ends up. I'll be honest. I think Klingberg ends up in Seattle. That's just me.
Yeah, I
personally.
mean, we made that prediction in
Yeah.
our free agency video as well. But guys, we just want to hear what you have to say. Who wins this deal, Pittsburgh or Montreal? We want to hear from the Pens fans. We want to hear from the Habs fans. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share this to any Habs fans or Pittsburgh fans. We'll see you on the next episode.